Hey everyone, welcome. I'm down here at my wormery, and the bins that are due for a feeding are the African nightcrawlers. They're the ones that live right here in these two systems. I've got some info about them. They've now exceeded 100 days of age. They're 102 days old at this point. Getting lined up for their 10th feeding at this point, and it's been 11 days since we last checked in on these little guys. Their routine feeding last time was things like banana peels and other veggie scraps, tomato, whatever. But each system also got a slice of cheese. So I'm curious to see what these worms have done with this cheese over the past 11 days. I don't know. Maybe they nibbled on it, maybe they didn't. I guess we'll see. It was Munster. I like Munster. Hopefully they like Munster. We'll see. Let's get them up on the bench and see how they're doing. What we've got here is bin number 1 all set to go. The foods they're getting is melon. There's watermelon in here as well as cantaloupe melon. There's also the tops of a number of strawberries in here. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else. And there's a good bit of it in here, but if you know melon, it's mostly moisture. Once that stuff starts to thaw out, because it is being put in here frozen, once it starts to thaw out, I believe it's going to start dampening the bin considerably. This piece of newspaper has been nibbled quite extensively by being out here on the top surface. Yeah, they've done a number on it. It's like Swiss cheese. I guess these double folded sections of it seemed to do okay to a certain degree. This stuff to me is starting to look like it might be better used as perhaps bedding down in the feeding area. I don't know. Should we try to make one more use of it as top covering? It seems like it's pretty far gone. Yeah, the worms really do seem to like hanging out underneath that pink plastic covering that was on here. It causes a lot of moisture to recirculate, and the worms seem to really enjoy being out here on the surface to enjoy that moisture. And maybe right now we're not seeing too many on the surface because it is pretty bright with all the sun streaming in here. Let's see, so leftover leafy stuff and paper bits from the top covering. This is leftover foods here I'm bumping into. It's like a corn cob that goes back who knows how far. There's going to be a bunch of little corn cob bits in here, I'm sure. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. There's also the stems, pumpkin stems. Well, it was one pumpkin stem that was cut in half. This is just a piece of it, and the other piece of it's in the other system we're going to be checking in on momentarily. More corn. So I guess the older types of foods that we found as leftovers last time must have been scattered along the top, and perhaps the newer foods were placed down lower. Now I'm starting to see bits of tomato and some of the shredded paper, which is what I know we used as the bedding last time. Here's a banana stem. I don't remember if the system's got 2 banana peels or just 1, but I'm a little surprised to find only the stem. I usually expect to see a little bit more of the banana peel than just the stem, but maybe these banana stems are all that was left of that nice, generous feeding last time. I don't know. To me, it seemed like a couple banana peels would be pretty generous, but you know, maybe there's a heartier appetite at work here than I'm anticipating. Alright, well, we bumped into all kinds of corn bits as well as banana stems. No banana peel from what I could tell. And I'm trying to think. The cheese, I think, would have been placed right down the middle, but I see no sign of it. Not even a little bit of like smear, gooey, light colored anything, because it was light colored. I don't think it would take on any other color over time, so I think they just ate it. So that's good. This is the bedding that was applied as part of the feeding last time. Today we're going to be using a whole bunch of used napkins as the bedding to go underneath the feeding. So any of this leftover shredded paper I'm spotting in here from the previous feeding, I'm just kind of nudging it aside to give us a little bit of space in which we can lay in some fresh bedding and the food. And got a good bit of leftovers too. Let's see. Just reach in here and grab a couple napkins. These are like big, large napkins. You know, when they're like in their flat position, they're a lot bigger than your typical household napkin. They're kind of decorative and perhaps a little bit more heavy duty than your everyday napkin. So 3 of them I've placed down here at the bottom. Let's start bringing in their melon treats. Cantaloupe melon, watermelon. Let's make sure we give them some yummy strawberry as well. Let's see here. Somebody made a pretty good suggestion in the comments the other day, because sometimes they probably hear me talking about how, you know, I question whether I was fair in divvying out the feeding as I'm looking at what I've already put out compared to what I still have yet to dish out. I start to question whether I'm keeping the proportions fair. Might make more sense to do it the way it was suggested by that viewer, which is to sort of, prior to bringing it down here, sorting it out a little bit more evenly to make sure it's dished out equitably. Because sometimes it's only after I dish out the second portion that I can get a gauge of whether it resembles what the previous bin looked like as it was given its portion or not. Not a very scientific method. So these corn cobs, they're taking quite some time, but they'll get there eventually. I guess as long as I still see corn cobs floating around in the bins, it's sort of like a slight reminder of summer. But summer's gone. The heat's running. It's been chilly. So I think we're pretty good here. I'm just looking at, we give them, got another napkin here. Do we give them perhaps just a little bit more paper and then use that as the reason to also give them some worm chow? Why don't we do that too? As long as it's right here, I've got my worm chow. It's kind of a powdery mix of different things I run through the blender. Whatever's laying around. This mix has like nuts in it, some birdseed, some cornstarch, I believe. And that to me is starting to look like a nice feeding. We'll hold on to this coffee filter here as a cover for the feeding area to indicate to ourselves where we last fed. And things on the outer edges look pretty decent. I see worms hanging out in it. In a couple bins I've checked the outer edges recently, and the outer edges at times seemed a little bit barren of activity. It suggested to me it might have been a bit too dry over there for the worms' liking, but here I think I'm seeing pretty good worm activity on the outskirts, so I'm not worried about moisture here. It seems to be in order. Castings are piling up really nicely too over here. I mean, as you brush it around with your fingers, you could tell it's a whole lot more than just worm casting. There's all kinds of chunks of leaves and paper and everything mixed in. But it's all got this really nice, fluffy, airy consistency to it. Nice and easy to break it up and spread it around. Hopefully it stays that way. All right, we're going to see what we could do about bringing this thing back, because it totally slipped my mind until I just looked over there a moment ago that as far as top covering papers go, we were going to see what we could do about preserving this one and letting it do one last at duty in this function and in this role. And you know what? Combining it with the feeding zone indicator, it seems like it's doing a pretty good job. Right? Got to give it some credit where credit is due. All right, let's get the system covered up. We can get the other bin fed, and we'll be done. All right, so here we are at bin number 2. Let's see how they're doing. Well, you know, in these systems where I launch the 2 bins on the same day with the same number of worms and then manage them almost identically, it's fair to expect that things are going to be pretty similar in the 2 systems. This white stuff reminds me of something I saw growing on one of the pumpkin stems last time. I think it was last time. Something that resembled kind of a fungus. So I guess here we go. Figured if we were to dig right down the middle, we're going to find that pumpkin stem right there for us to check out. It feels so light. The worms must be doing a number on it. Oh, here's some corn cob bits starting to pile up already, so let's take a quick look at how the leftovers are holding up. It's getting worked, you know. Each piece of corn cob seems like it's gradually getting whittled down by worms hanging out inside of it and around it, chewing away. I don't know if I've seen anything that resembles the cheese yet. I believe in both bins it would have been placed somewhere near the middle. So perhaps just by searching around this area we might see something resembling cheese, or maybe not. Well, if we didn't find any leftovers of it in the last one, it's reasonable to expect that we'll see nothing different here. Some of these are also corn cobs, just shattering basically at this point under their own weight. So the worms eventually whittle it all down, but certain parts of it just take longer than other parts. So it's not so important, but I usually am kind of curious just to see how each larger piece of leftover food in the feeding area is holding up. Some of the stuff I bump into goes way, way back, like the pumpkin stem, or other things go back quite a way, like the corn cob bits. Other things that you just fed the most recent time, like banana peels, could have very little, if any, of it remaining at the end. I don't think I've seen any banana peel stems, but you would have to think that the same way we found 2 of them in the other bin, that there'd be leftovers of the banana peels and stems in here as well. But as you can see, there's all kinds of stuff here, and I'm kind of just stirring it about. I'm not using any sort of a systematic approach to try to make sure I've found every last bit of leftover, but oh, here it goes. Banana stem. That one looked pretty worked. It makes me wonder if I would have been part of the last feeding, or maybe that stem goes back even further. But alright, just I guess the fact that I did find one there at the last moment made me feel like I should keep looking. Maybe I'll find another 1 or 2 of them. But I think we're in good shape here to feed. We've given ourselves a good large opening to drop the bedding and foods into. So once again, I'm gonna see what we got here as far as, oh, now they're not fancy napkins anymore. Now they're paper towel. And a good bit of it, it seems. Guess we're gonna have ourselves the napkin versus paper towel drag race here to see how the worms do on this stuff. So let's bring in the last of the food that we bought for them here. Is it a fair split? This is always the point in time when I get to evaluate my food divvying out technique. It seems like this bin got a little bit more cantaloupe than the other one, maybe. I don't know. What do you think? I think it did. And we've still got all these leftovers we've got to bring back into the feeding area. Hopefully we've got enough material around the edges to cover up with. Let's see how we did with that. Wait, we got coffee here too. Let's not forget. Just want to make sure I've got enough material out on the edges to cover up with at the end. But let's not forget the coffee portion here too. I'm trying to remember now. How did we do on worm chow? I think that too just sort of came in at the end as a little sprinkle, or did they even get any of the other bin? I can't remember. Either way, these guys are getting a little bit, and I think we're almost done. We've got ourselves our replacement feeding zone indicator here, and I think the top covering newspaper in this case is probably holding out a little bit better than the top covering newspaper in the other bin was doing. So here I think we'll have no problem restoring the top covering newspaper. Once again, I'm feeling like the material in these two systems is very similar to one another. There's a lot of castings, but there's also all kinds of little bedding bits and everything floating around through this stuff everywhere. And it all has this really nice fluffy consistency to it. All breaks apart readily. It's got a good moisture content to it as well. Otherwise, I don't think you'd see all these worms wanting to be in it. Even here on the outer edges where sometimes things get a little bit dry, I'm seeing plenty of worms hanging out in the stuff, so it doesn't concern me as far as the moisture levels. It's a little deceiving when you see stuff crumbling and flowing this readily. It makes you think that it's got to be dry just by its movement and behavior, but this stuff has a really good moisture content to it. And, well, you know, if you ask me, with all that watermelon and cantaloupe melon rinds going in here frozen, I got a feeling that that stuff's going to start kicking off a lot of moisture very soon as it thaws. enhancing the moisture level in here considerably. So I think that's going to be the case in both of these systems. And the worms are not going to mind, that's for sure. They're going to love it. Yeah, this piece of paper is holding up pretty good. This to me just must be mold of some sort. I can't tell for sure, but I mean, it's not styrofoam, even though it looks like styrofoam. It's got to be just some sort of a substance that's growing there. But that brings us to the end of our check-in with our now 102-day-old African nightcrawler worm bins getting their 10th feeding. And it's a pretty good size feeding, especially this bin. These guys should be pretty content with what they got here today, as well as all that paper to nibble on as well. They're going to be good for another couple weeks, no sweat. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye now.